Part 1. The arrival, the sky turned black over every major city on Earth. Not with clouds, but with ships. Massive vessels hung above New York, London, Tokyo, Sao Paulo, and Cairo like metal mountains blocking out the sun. People stopped what they were doing and looked up. Children asked their parents what was happening. The adults did not know what to say. The world had changed in a single moment, and there was no going back. Commander Kale stood on the bridge of the Vareth flagship, looking down at the planet below. He had conquered 17 star systems in his career. None of them had offered real resistance. The species he fought against were always weak, always confused, always ready to surrender when they saw the size and power of his fleet. Earth would be no different. The scan showed a backward world with basic technology. Their weapons were crude. Their military was scattered across different nations that could not even work together. This would be the easiest conquest of his life. "Send the ultimatum," Kale said to his communications officer. His voice was cold and certain. The message went out to every country on Earth. The words were simple and direct. Surrender your weapons. Surrender your governments. Surrender your resources. Do this and most of you will survive. Resist and you will die. The Vareth Collective offered this choice to every conquered world, and they always accepted. Fear was a powerful tool. Captain Nathan Cross received the message in the Global Defense Coalition Command Center, deep underground in the Swiss mountains. He had known this day would come. For 3 months, ever since the discovery of the approaching fleet, he had been preparing. While the world debated and argued and feared, Cross had been working. He had unified the military forces of every nation. He had created a defense network that spanned the entire planet. He had trained soldiers to fight an enemy they could never match in technology or numbers. And he had done something else. He had taught people to understand that surrender was not safety. It was death, just slower. When the ultimatum arrived, Cross did not panic. He stood in the command center and looked at his officers. Young men and women from dozens of countries, all trained to work together despite their different languages and cultures. This was his answer to the Vareth ultimatum. Not surrender, not fear, but unity. They expect us to be afraid, Cross said. They expect us to see their ships and collapse. They expect us to give up because they are strong and we are weak. They are right about one thing. We are weak compared to them. But they have made a mistake. They do not understand what weakness means to us. In the cities below, people moved into shelters that had been built in secret. The governments of the world had spent months preparing for this moment. Underground bunkers, hidden factories, supply caches, hospitals, and communication centers had been hidden across every continent. While the Vareth believed they were attacking a helpless world, the world was already underground, already organized, already ready to fight. Dr. Lisa Harmon worked in a secret facility beneath the Nevada desert. She had been Earth's top weapons designer for 15 years. She had taken old technology, broken systems that were supposed to be useless, and remade them into something new. She had created weapons that worked in ways the Vareth had never seen. She had studied the scans of the alien ships and found gaps in their defense systems, places where old human technology could still cause damage. She had designed strategies that did not make sense to alien minds that only understood logic and power. When Cross gave the order, Harmon was ready. The first strike came at midnight, coordinated across the entire planet. Satellites launched electromagnetic pulses. Old military weapons that the Vareth thought were harmless fired at the alien ships. Computer viruses created by human programmers attacked the Vareth systems. The attacks were not large enough to destroy the ships, but they did something else. They showed the Vareth that humanity would fight. They showed that this world would not surrender without a battle. Kale watched the attacks with confusion. his ships absorbed the damage with barely any effect. The human weapons were thousands of years behind Vareth technology. They were throwing stones at a fortress made of metal. But then he noticed something strange. The humans had destroyed some of their own military bases in the attack. They had damaged their own infrastructure. Why would they do this? What could they gain from hurting themselves? In the command center, Cross watched the battle data with cold focus. The first strike had worked exactly as planned. The Vareth would respond now. They would attack the military centers, the government buildings, the places where power came from. They would try to cut off Earth's ability to fight. But Earth had already moved its power underground. The cities above would burn, and humanity would fight from the darkness below. All forces moved to secondary positions, Cross ordered. Every soldier knows the plan. Every citizen knows their role. This is not a battle of weapons. This is a battle of will. And the Vareth will learn that humanity's will is something they cannot destroy with fire. Around the world, families huddled together in shelters. Teachers protected children in underground schools. Doctors prepared hospitals hidden beneath mountains. Engineers worked in secret factories to produce new weapons and repair damaged equipment. The world had become a single machine, and every person was part of it. Soldiers and civilians, rich and poor, young and old. They were all fighting now. They were all part of the same desperate struggle. The Vareth had come to Earth, expecting to find a broken world that would surrender in hours. Instead, they found something completely different. They found a species that would fight. They found a world that had unified not through strength, but through the knowledge that they had nowhere to go. This was their home. This was where their families lived. This was where they would make their stand. The Vareth had waged war on Earth, but they did not yet understand what that meant. They did not know that they had just begun a battle that would teach them the true meaning of human determination. Part 2. The first strike. 3 days had passed since the Vareth arrived in Earth's orbit. 3 days of constant bombardment from above. The alien ships had destroyed every major military base they could find. They had leveled government buildings, destroyed weapons factories, and shattered the infrastructure of human civilization. The cities burned under relentless fire from above. The Vareth expected surrender to come next. The Vareth expected broken survivors to walk out from the ruins with their hands in the air. The Vareth did not understand that they were hitting empty targets. Dr. Lisa Harmon had spent 6 months preparing for this exact moment. She had worked in a facility buried 2 miles beneath the Arizona desert. Her team consisted of the brightest weapons designers from every country on Earth. Together, they had studied the Vareth ships and found what others had missed. The alien vessels were powerful, but they were also predictable. They relied on advanced technology that was designed to work in specific ways. And technology, no matter how advanced, had weaknesses. Harmon had created weapons that should not have worked. She had combined 50-year-old satellite technology with new computer systems, designed to work without any electronic connection to the Vareth scanning systems. She had created electromagnetic pulses that would spread through Earth's atmosphere in patterns that would damage the alien ship's ability to see clearly. She had designed explosives that would deactivate at specific times, making it impossible for the Vareth to predict where and when they would explode. She had turned Earth's disadvantage into an advantage. The Vareth's advanced technology could not see what was so simple that it should not exist. When Captain Cross gave the signal, Harmon activated the plan. Across the planet, weapons that should have been useless decades ago suddenly came to life. Old satellites fired from positions in space. Electromagnetic systems hidden in mountains sent out pulses that spread across continents. Computer systems in bunkers beneath cities sent signals that confused the Vareth sensors. For the first time since arriving on Earth, the alien fleet suffered real damage. A Verith destroyer near London took a direct hit from a weapon system that was 40 years old. The impact should have done nothing. Instead, it knocked out the ship's defensive shield generators. Without shields, the ship became vulnerable. More weapons struck. The destroyer exploded in the sky above the city, showering metal down onto the streets below. Near Tokyo, a Verith transport ship suddenly found its navigation systems were not working correctly. It tried to move away from the attacked position, but crashed into another ship. Both vessels fell from the sky. In Sao Paulo, Cairo, New York, and dozens of other cities, the same pattern repeated. The Verith had expected to face an enemy with simple weapons that would bounce off their armor. They had not expected an enemy that would use old technology in new ways. An enemy that would fight dirty and without honor. Commander Kale received the damage reports with shock. 7 ships destroyed. 12 more damaged. The weapons that had killed his soldiers were primitive. The humans had combined ancient technology with new strategies that made no logical sense. According to every military calculation, the human weapons should have failed. But they had not. Something was wrong with this enemy. Something was different from every other species the Verith had conquered. General Patricia Reeves controlled Earth's response from a command center beneath the Rocky Mountains. She was a soldier with 50 years of experience, and she had learned one thing in her lifetime. Technology did not win wars. People won wars. Understanding your enemy and knowing when to be flexible won wars. The Verith expected humanity to fight like they did, with powerful weapons and direct attacks. Reeves had decided to fight like humans did, with small moves, with sacrifice, with strategies that made no sense unless you understood that humans fought to protect their homes. Send the second wave, Reeves ordered. The second attack was different from the first. Humans came out of their shelters with portable weapons. They attacked Verith landing parties that had come down to the ground. The aliens expected combat with soldiers who would fight with honor and follow military rules. They found themselves fighting civilians who were willing to die for their families. A mother with a weapon could fight with a courage that no soldier from the Verith had ever seen. A teacher protecting children could do things that made no military sense. A farmer defending his land could create chaos and confusion that the Verith's logic could not predict. The Verith soldiers had superior weapons and superior armor. But they had never fought enemies like this. They had never faced people who did not care about their own safety because they were protecting something more important. On Earth, a single human with inferior weapons could tie up an entire unit of Verith soldiers. A group of civilians could destroy a landing craft through methods that were completely irrational. They would use explosives that would kill them as well as the aliens. They would drive vehicles into the ships. They would do anything, including dying themselves, if it meant protecting their families. Kale made a decision. He would destroy all of humanity's cities. He would burn the planet. If the humans would not surrender, then they would simply cease to exist. There would be no more enemy to frustrate him with irrational tactics and impossible resistance. The order went out. The bombardment intensified. But the humans were no longer in the cities. They were underground, in bunkers and shelters and hidden fortresses, carved into the rock beneath the planet's surface. For the first time in the Verith conquest of the galaxy, an enemy was fighting back and refusing to die. The humans had learned something that the Verith conquest of all those other worlds had taught them. They had learned that they could lose. They had learned that they could fail. And instead of making them surrender, this knowledge had made them willing to sacrifice everything. The Verith had expected an easy victory. What they had found was a species that understood how to die fighting, and that understanding was more powerful than any weapon either side had ever made. Part 3. The True Nature of Humanities. 6 months into the invasion, the battle had become something that the Varath did not understand. Their ships still dominated the skies. Their weapons were still superior. But their enemy would not die. More than that, their enemy was learning. Every battle showed humanity adapting, changing, creating new tactics that the Varath's rigid military structure could not counter. Commander. Kale stood in his command center and watched the data flow across the screens. Another human attack had damaged 3 more ships. This time, the weapons had come from directions the Varath had not expected. The humans had learned to move their weapons constantly, to hide them in places where the Varath scanners could not find them. They had learned to coordinate attacks from multiple locations simultaneously, which should have been impossible for a species with such primitive communication technology. How is this possible? Kale asked his chief strategist. Their weapons are thousands of years behind our technology. Their military should have been destroyed in the first week. The strategist had no answer. The data simply did not make sense. The humans should have been defeated already. According to every military calculation, every simulation, every model that the Varath had created, the humans should have surrendered months ago. But they had not. And somehow, impossibly, they were still fighting. Daniel Matthews had been a fighter pilot before the invasion. Now he was something else. He was a soldier in a war that no one had ever fought before. The Varath ships moved through the sky like gods. But gods could be killed if you were willing to pay the price. Matthews had decided months ago that he was willing to pay that price. His fighter was damaged. Repairs were impossible. Escape was no longer an option. The only choice left was to make his death mean something. He aimed his dying aircraft at a Varath command ship and pushed the throttle forward. The ship accelerated toward the massive alien vessel. Weapons fire tore through his hull. Systems failed. But he did not stop. He did not change course. He flew directly into the side of the command ship and detonated every explosive on board. The Varath vessel exploded in a massive fireball. The command ship fell from the sky. When the explosion cleared, Daniel Matthews was gone. But the Varath had lost a critical command vessel and 200 soldiers. The humans had lost 1 pilot. By every logical calculation, the Varath had won the exchange. But something was wrong with this logic. The humans kept making these choices. They kept trading their lives for Varath equipment and soldiers. And somehow, these trades were adding up to failure for the Varath. General Patricia Reeves had created a defense structure that should not have worked. She had taken the scattered militaries of dozens of nations and unified them into a single force. But more than that, she had taught them something that no alien military could understand. She had taught them to trust each other completely. Soldiers from countries that had been enemies for centuries now fought side by side. They protected each other. They trusted each other with their lives. To the Varath, who valued individual strength and military hierarchy above all else, this was incomprehensible. The human defense spread across the entire planet like a nervous system. When the Varath attacked one location, the humans moved resources from other locations to reinforce it. The Varath ships were faster and more powerful, but the humans had something better. They had information flowing constantly through their network. A soldier in Africa could receive data from a scout in Europe and act on it within minutes. The Varath command structure was slower. It was more rigid. It required orders from commanders who had to process information through channels. By the time a Varath commander made a decision, the humans had already moved and changed and adapted. The Varath began to notice something else. The humans did not fight just to win battles. They fought to protect their families. A human mother would defend her children with weapons that should have been useless against Varath armor. She would run at an alien soldier, knowing she could not possibly win, knowing she would die, because her children were behind her. This was not a military strategy that any Verith soldier could understand. It was not logical. It was not effective by any military measurement. But it was completely terrifying to an enemy that had never encountered it before. Kel began to understand that the Verith had made a critical mistake. They had measured humanity by the wrong standards. They had looked at human technology and found it primitive. They had looked at human weapons and found them useless. But they had not looked at human will. They had not seen human sacrifice. They had not understood that a species that was willing to destroy its own cities to prevent conquest was something completely different from anything the Verith had encountered. In the underground shelters, children asked their parents when the war would end. The parents did not have answers. Teachers taught lessons in bunkers lit by artificial light. Doctors worked in hidden hospitals with limited supplies. Engineers repaired weapons in secret factories. Farmers grew food in underground gardens. Every person on the planet had become part of the war. There were no civilians anymore. There were only soldiers and the people they were fighting to protect. The Verith had expected a quick victory. They had expected to conquer a primitive world and move on to the next one. Instead, they had found something that they could not defeat with weapons alone. They had found a species that understood the difference between living and surviving. The humans had chosen to survive, no matter what the cost. They had chosen to fight, no matter how terrible the odds. And in making this choice, they had discovered something about themselves that no amount of alien technology could overcome. They had discovered the true strength of humanity, and that strength was growing with every battle. The Verith Collective had conquered 17 star systems, but they had never conquered a world where everyone fought. They had never faced a species that loved their planet more than they loved their own safety. The Verith were about to learn that when you wage war on a world like Earth, you are not fighting an army. You are fighting a species that has decided to survive, and nothing in the galaxy is more dangerous than that. Part 4. The turning point, the breakthrough, came from an unexpected place. Marcus Webb was not a soldier. He was an engineer from Portland, Oregon, who had spent his entire life studying how things worked. When the Verith invaded, he had gone underground like everyone else. But instead of picking up a weapon, he had picked up a Verith component that had been salvaged from a destroyed ship. For 3 months, Webb studied that component. He worked in a hidden laboratory beneath the mountains of Oregon. He took the alien technology apart piece by piece. He did not have the advanced tools or knowledge of Verith engineering, but he had something else. He had human curiosity. He had the ability to look at something he did not understand and ask questions. He had the willingness to fail 1,000 times if it meant finding the truth. The Verith shield systems had been perfected over thousands of years. They were designed to be invulnerable. But Webb discovered something that the Verith engineers had overlooked. The shields needed to cycle through a specific frequency every few seconds. This cycling took 0.05 seconds. It was a fraction of a moment, barely noticeable. But it was an opening. Webb ran the numbers over and over, checking and rechecking his calculations. When he was absolutely certain, he sent the information to General Reeves. One message, one piece of information, a frequency, a timing sequence, a place where alien shields could be penetrated. Reeves understood immediately what this meant. She understood that everything was about to change. She sent the information to every human military unit on the planet. She sent it to soldiers in hiding, to engineers in secret factories, to pilots in damaged fighters. She sent the information that would make every soldier on Earth a potential threat to the Verith fleet. The next attack was different from all the previous attacks. The humans had moved from trying to damage the Verith ships to trying to destroy them. Weapons fired at precise moments at the exact frequency that Webb had discovered. The timing had to be perfect. The angle had to be exact. But the humans had 6 billion people on their side. They had soldiers everywhere. They had scouts watching every Vareth movement. They had computers running calculations and sending targeting information constantly. A Vareth destroyer was hit during its shield cycle. The armor underneath the shields was not built to withstand human weapons. The ship exploded. A transport vessel was destroyed. A fighter craft went down. The Vareth shields, the technology they had relied on for 1,000 years, had become a liability. Now the humans knew when to attack. Commander Kale made a decision that would cost him everything. He decided to call for reinforcements. He called the Vareth Collective and told them that Earth was more dangerous than they had believed. He told them that humanity was a species that could not be conquered through force alone. He told them that they needed a bigger fleet, more soldiers, more weapons. He told them they needed total war. The Vareth Collective heard his request, and they refused. The Collective sent a message that came across as cold mathematics. Kale had 20 ships. He had 10,000 soldiers. He had the ability to completely destroy Earth if necessary. According to every calculation, he should already have won. If he could not conquer a primitive world with this much power, then the problem was not the humans. The problem was the commander. The problem was Kale himself. The Collective ordered Kale to complete the conquest in 90 days or face execution. They offered him no reinforcements. They offered him no additional weapons. They offered him only the choice between victory and death. Kale had no choice. He ordered a total bombardment of the planet. He ordered his ships to lay waste to every city, every visible structure, every military installation. He was going to destroy Earth so completely that there would be nothing left but ash and rock. If humanity would not surrender, then humanity would die. The bombardment lasted for weeks. But the humans were no longer in the cities. They had moved underground years ago. Kale was destroying empty ruins while humanity fought from the darkness below. The more he bombed, the more desperate he became. And the more desperate he became, the more mistakes he made. The Vareth soldiers on the ground began to fail. Without air support from the massive bombardment above, they were exposed. They were cut off from their supply lines. The humans, living underground with supplies stocked in secret, were not afraid of a long war. They could wait. They could move slowly. They could fight without needing reinforcement. A young woman named Victoria, Carter from Chicago, had become one of Reeves' best commanders. She could move a unit across impossible terrain. She could organize an attack that seemed impossible to execute. She understood that the Vareth were machines following programming, and machines could be broken if you knew where to hit them. She had learned this from watching her own people. Humans were not machines. Humans adapted. Humans changed. Humans could take a defeat and turn it into a strategy. One by one, the Vareth soldiers died. Not in grand battles, but in small engagements where the humans had every advantage. The alien forces were cut off, surrounded, and eliminated. The Vareth fleet tried to resupply from orbit, but their landing craft were shot down by weapons that had been improving every day. The humans were learning faster than the Vareth could adapt. 3 months after Kale received his orders, the Vareth had only 2 functional ships remaining in Earth orbit. 23 of his original 25 vessels were destroyed. 8,000 of his soldiers were dead. The remaining 2,000 were scattered across the planet, hidden in caves and bunkers, slowly being hunted down by an enemy that could not be defeated. Commander Kale sat in the command center of his flagship and watched his fleet die. He had conquered 17 star systems. He had destroyed hundreds of ships from dozens of species. But he could not conquer Earth. He could not defeat a species that would sacrifice everything because they had nowhere else to go. He could not fight an enemy that had learned to see the weakness in every strength he possessed. Kale made his final transmission to the Verith Collective. He told them that Earth was not a world that could be conquered. Earth was a death world. Its people had been forged by a harsh planet and a difficult environment. They had learned to fight against nature itself. Fighting against the Verith was simply a natural extension of what they had always done. The conquest of Earth was impossible not because of technology, but because of what humanity truly was. The message was received, and then Kale's ship was destroyed, and the final Verith commander fell silent forever. Part 5. The victory the last Verith ship tried to escape. It had been damaged during the final battles above Earth's atmosphere. Its shields were failing. Its weapons were useless against human attacks. Captain Nathan Cross watched from the command center as the vessel attempted to run. He understood what it meant. The alien was trying to flee. The alien was trying to tell its people that Earth could not be conquered. "Do not let them leave," Cross said to his officers. The human ships, rebuilt and repaired from captured Verith technology combined with human design, moved to block the escape path. They had learned how to fly alien ships. They had learned to use alien weapons. More importantly, they had learned to do both things better than the Verith because they did not have the limitations of alien thinking. Humans could break rules. Humans could use weapons in ways they were not designed to be used. Humans could improvise in ways that aliens, bound by logic and protocol, could never match. The Verith ship tried to accelerate through the blockade. Human weapons fire struck it from multiple angles. The ship's engines failed. Its hull began to break apart from the pressure of Earth's atmosphere. For a moment, it seemed to hang in the sky above the planet, a symbol of an invader's defeat. Then it fell. The ship descended through the clouds and struck the ocean off the coast of Australia. The impact created a massive wave that spread across the water. The ship sank into the depths. The last of the Verith Armada was gone. In the command center, humans from a dozen nations stood together and watched the data confirm what they had done. The Verith had come to Earth with overwhelming force. They had destroyed cities and killed millions. But they had underestimated their enemy. They had measured humanity by the wrong standards. They had looked at technology and weapons and military power. They had not looked at the thing that made humanity actually dangerous. They had not recognized human determination. They had not understood human sacrifice. The destruction of the Verith fleet meant that the war on the ground was essentially over. The Verith soldiers still on Earth were no longer soldiers. They were refugees. They were stranded on an alien world with no way home. Some of them tried to continue fighting. They dug in at various locations and tried to make stands. But they were facing an enemy that had 6 billion people, and they were a few thousand soldiers with no reinforcements coming. General Patricia Reeves made the decision that would define humanity's future. She ordered the Verith soldiers to be captured, not killed. When her officers questioned this order, she explained her reasoning. Killing them would be easy. Capturing them would be harder. But capturing them would send a message to the Verith Collective that humans were not savages. Humans were something else. Humans were a species that could defeat you and still choose mercy. The Verith soldiers came out of their hiding places slowly. They were shocked that they were being allowed to live. They expected death. They expected brutal revenge for the cities that had been destroyed and the people who had been killed. Instead, they found themselves being fed, clothed, and treated as prisoners of war. Some of them wept at this treatment. They had killed so many humans, destroyed so much. But the humans treated them with dignity anyway. The world above ground was a graveyard. Cities were destroyed. Billions of tons of soil and rock had been turned to dust. Forests had burned. Oceans had been damaged. The planet itself had been wounded by the invasion. But humanity had survived. The underground bunkers that had saved them now became the Foundation for Rebuilding. Dr. Lisa Harmon emerged from her laboratory for the first time in 9 months. She had spent the entire war below the earth, designing weapons and improving systems. She looked up at the sky and saw it was clear. The massive Varith ships that had blocked the sun were gone. Light was reaching Earth's surface again. What do we do now? Someone asked her. Harmon thought about this question carefully. They had defeated the invaders. They had proven that humanity could stand against the most powerful military force in the galaxy. But standing against something was not the same as being ready for what came next. The Varith were only one species in a vast galaxy. There would be others. There would be other civilizations. Some would be peaceful. Some would be hostile. We tell the galaxy what happened, Harmon said. We tell them that Earth is not a world to conquer. We tell them that humanity will fight. But we also tell them something else. We tell them that if they come to us in peace, we will welcome them. If they come to us in war, we will teach them why that was a mistake. Weeks later, when the fighting had completely stopped, Captain Nathan Cross stood in what had once been Central Park in New York. The trees were burned. The grass was ash. But in the distance, he could see people beginning to plant new seeds. They were beginning to rebuild. They were beginning to create new growth from the destruction. A young girl, no more than 8 years old, walked up to him. She was holding something in her hand. Is the war over? She asked. Cross looked at her. She had spent her entire childhood underground. She had never felt natural sunlight or breathed real air. She had never seen a tree or a flower. The war was all she had known. Yes, Cross said. The war is over. We won. The girl looked down at what she was holding. It was a seed. It was something that her parents had given her when they were underground. Something to remind her that the world above still existed, that plants still grew, that life continued. She walked to a patch of burned earth and pressed the seed into the ground. She patted the soil carefully around it. Then we should grow things, she said. We should grow things so the war is really over. Cross watched as other children gathered around her. They had seeds in their hands, gifts from parents who had wanted to give them hope. Together, they began planting in the ruins of the city. They began the work of rebuilding what the Varith had destroyed. The message eventually reached the Varith Collective. It came from the surviving Varith soldiers, released and sent back to their people. The message was simple. The Collective could not conquer Earth. The Collective could not destroy humanity. A species that would plant seeds in the ashes of war, that would show mercy to enemies who had tried to exterminate them, that would sacrifice everything for the freedom to stay on their own world, could not be conquered, could not be broken, could not be defeated. The Varith Collective received this message in shock. For the first time in their history, a species had defeated them. Not with superior weapons, not with superior numbers, but with something that could not be measured in military calculations. Humans had defeated the Varith with will, sacrifice, and the simple refusal to accept defeat. The galaxy learned this lesson. The Varith had waged war on Earth, and Earth had waged victory on the Varith. The galaxy would never be the same.